Look, you want to play blind man, go walk with a shepherd. But me, my eyes are wide fucking open.
It's happening, Great Vengeance back with another one, and I want to talk about Metaphor ReFantazio. Game that's been released to critical acclaim, smashing sales numbers, and sitting at a 93 on Metacritic. And what I want to say is, how? Because if this is the best we've got to offer this year, and gaming really is in the doldrums. Now, I'm not averse to the JRPG. I played many over the years, but it's not a genre that I feel like is the one that I'm still in gaming for nowadays. I think it's a tired genre. I think it only does well off of nostalgia and a weeb fan base. And obviously you've seen the likes of Final Fantasy where they've moved into a more action focused combat gameplay and better storytelling. But then there are these games that still continue to roll out these old tropes, and they're obviously still successful because enough people are buying them and enough reviewers are reviewing them well. But with regards to this game, I just do not understand why. Because this game offers nothing new whatsoever. And this fabled job system, which is decent, but again, it's nothing new. Job system's been around for over 30 years. But the fact that, it's the first time Atlas have done it, okay, fair enough. And yeah, I've never been able to get into the Persona games. Closest I got with this year was Persona 3 Reload. But again, you're playing it, I'm like, I'm a grown adult male. Why am I playing this? What's with this weebiness that are in these games? Who does this appeal to? And with regards to Metaphor, I thought we were getting something a little bit different. Because from the, some early reviews, I don't really go into reviews if I'm going to get a game, but I'd heard, talk of, it's been heavily influenced by Game of Thrones, and it's a darker setting, and all the social commentary and societal commentary, meta commentary, all this sort of thing. So I'm like, okay, I'm seeing it get incredibly well reviewed. A lot of people talking about Game of the Year, so I thought I'll give the demo a go. And to my surprise, I actually really enjoyed the demo. I think it set up quite an intriguing world. It had some decent character work. It threatened, Game of Thrones style major deaths. And you could see it obviously had like, a somewhat darker edge than Persona. Although, Persona does have some darkish moments. I can't say they don't, to be fair. But yeah, so I thought, right, I'll get the game because it's done enough. And not only that, the combat, I did enjoy the combat as well. I thought, there's something here. There's definitely something here. And that's the thing with this game, like, it's not a bad game. It is a decent game. It's just my problem is, why is this in the running for Game of the Year? Because I've now got 40 hours into this game, and I'm not going to complete the game. And that's despite spending many hours, enough hours to say that, I've enjoyed large portions of this game, but ultimately it's fell victim to the same thing that I see over and over again in these sort of games, particularly JRPGs, in that the storytelling is shocking. And that's not to say there isn't some good lore and some good writing, good character work here. It's just the way these games deliver the story is terrible, and I'm just tired of it. I've long been tired of it. Because what I value in games, particularly when it comes to story, is obviously good writing, but it's how that story is delivered. Now, if I were to say to you, From Software games have incredible lore, I'm sure many of you would agree, but also, I think the stories are told terribly. And I have seen people, commentators, come up with the same critique. So I'm not alone in that. I'm sure many of you all think the same. Like, it's not a good story to play through like a Dark Souls game or, those sort of things. You do have to search for the lore yourself, and so I'm not saying there isn't good lore. I'm just saying the way the story is delivered, and it's the same with this metaphor, ReFantazio, where you'll go through large swathes of combat gameplay, dungeons, campaign dungeons, and then the gameplay loop will take you back to the overworld where you go through and you'll start collecting all your quests and stuff like that. And it's an OCD nightmare, I'll tell you that much. And I'm someone who typically will try and do everything in a game. The problem with that is that ultimately you kind of get burnt out on certain things. So with this, I've not been actively trying to do that. But what's killed it for me is the massive 10, 15, 20, 25 minute exposition dumps where you sat through terrible cutscenes where there's no voice acting, you're just looking at people talking on a screen. And what I've got to say about that is your writing's got to be very frigging good for me to sit through all that. And while I give them praise for the compendium which they've stolen from Final Fantasy 16, which was something that I did appreciate, storytelling for me, to make it excellent, has got to be economical, and it's got to get to the point. You can't labour the point. And an example of good storytelling in a video game would be BioShock, because that story doesn't waste a beat, you know what I mean? Everything it wants to tell you, it tells you. And I've seen another example of this in Western sort of game with Remedy, which really annoyed me, was Control. And they gave you so many documents where you're just like, I'm just collecting these. I'm not going to stop and read these documents. Who's going to do that? Especially when like you're going through the game and you're enjoying the gameplay. So it's like I'm not some Philistine who doesn't want to read anything, but you've got a visual medium. Use that to your advantage. I don't mind. It's like less is more. Less is more when it comes to having to read stuff, and when you're having to stop gameplay and then have to read through a shitload of stuff. This stuff happened back in the 80s and 90s because they didn't have the technology to do voice acting. So I understand that if you wanted to tell a grand sweeping story, you had to do that. But even then, the dialogue boxes meant you couldn't put that many words into it. So again, you had to be economical with your storytelling. And nowadays, that's just not the case. And you sit through swathes of stuff. An analogy for you, it's like when you're talking to a thick person who can't get the words out, but you know what they want to say before they actually get around to saying it. But because you're being polite, and patient, you'll let them get to it until you stop being patient, and then you just hurry them along. And what happens with these games is just I get to the point where like, right, basically, because you're telling a shit story, I'm not going to sit through these cutscenes, so I'm just going to start skipping them all. And when you're delivering a JRPG, story is a huge component of it. Like, why am I carrying on with this game? Because the gameplay is not really evolving throughout the story. You keep on playing for the gameplay to level up your characters and stuff like that, and unlock new abilities. But really, it's not massively changing throughout the entirety of the game. But with regards to the story, it's just pointless. You get to the stage, I'm like 40 hours in, it's like I've just for the last like 2 or 3 hours, I've just been skipping every single cutscene. No interest, because if you're not gonna respect my time and tell me a good story, then what's the point of me sitting through and having to read through fucking tomes of boring dialogue? And another thing is also with these games, it's this whimsical thing which they're trying to have like a dark fantasy setting, but then it's full of whimsy and stuff like that. I'm like, grown men are making these games, a majority of grown men are playing these games. I no longer want to see, when I play a Final Fantasy game, I no longer want to see Moogles in my game because I'm not a weeb. I don't want this rubbish in my game. A metaphor threatens something a bit more mature, but again, they revert back to these childish tropes. And it's like, ultimately, if anything they had interesting to say, like with regards to a meta commentary on society, you're not getting anything new, basically. There's nothing you're getting new from these games. It's the same tired tropes, group of characters from disparate groups join together against an enemy, and they save the world and join everyone, and everyone lives happily ever after. And it's just like, okay, fair enough, you can have that story, but please, if tell it in a good way. So, but yeah, that's from that. Metaphor ReFantazio, 93 on Metacritic, Game of the Year contender, not a chance. And if it is, then gaming really is in the doldrums at the moment, because you just look everywhere and it's just like the standards are dropping left, right, and centre. And there's many reasons as to why that's happening. I'm sure people can deduce what some of them are. But Japan, for the large part, has probably escaped some of those, things that are being forced on them, or foisted on them. But nah, this is a problem with the JRPG in general. It's why I rarely play them anymore. And I definitely, this is like the fool me once, shame on you; fool me twice, shame on me. I will not be playing anymore of these Atlas JRPGs because they're just not for me. And ultimately, that is what it is. But this game, its age rating is 16 and above, and it would have been 18 and above had it had more bad language and overt violence. So they're obviously going for an adult audience, but I just don't know who these adults are. But there's obviously a lot of weebs out there. But yeah, let me know what you think. Did you enjoy this game? Am I completely off topic? Because for me, Silent Hill 2 Remake is the game of the year, without doubt. And everything else this year, there's been some decent things, but for the most part, it's been rubbish. And yeah, I want gaming to finally grow up, and I want people within the industry to grow up, and I just don't see that happening. So whilst that doesn't happen, we're going to continue getting weeb games from tired genres which don't introduce anything new and innovative. So yeah, let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, or dislike, as may be the case. But yeah, Metaphor ReFantazio, rubbish.
I think we should be leaving now.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.